can talk through it as we go. So let's jump in. So Michael Zhang's the head of international supply solutions at Wayfair. He's been at Wayfair for, oops, 1 second, I forgot to play. All right, so let's jump in. Michael Zhang's the head of international supply solutions at Wayfair. Has been there for 1.5 years, and his team is focused on onboarding and managing Asian-based suppliers. So he previously has managed the outdoor business furniture at Wayfair. So I think what's probably a good thing to do right now is, Michael, why don't you give us just a little overview of Wayfair in case anybody's new to it, but I guess if they're sitting here, they might have an inkling of what Wayfair does, but I think it's an important thing to cover.
Yeah, sure. So for all of you that don't know, Wayfair is an e-commerce website that is focusing on selling home goods. We started in the US about 2 decades ago, 20 years ago, and are currently the largest online home goods provider in the US. We also have Wayfair Canada, Wayfair UK, and Wayfair Germany. So we have expanded to different geographies. We are focused just on home goods. So we are different than Amazon or other e-commerce websites. Wayfair sells primarily, for example, our largest volume categories are different furniture categories. We are also selling other areas like large appliances or anything that people use in their own homes. We're really excited. So in terms of expanding our supplier network to international, which is why this team exists. But basically, historically, Wayfair has been very US focused and focused on traditional US suppliers that go to trade shows and are primarily only active in the US. And it's been recent years with Wayfair's growth that we're looking more and more internationally. For some context, Wayfair is probably on track for about in the range of $13 billion of revenue this year, something like that. And we're a publicly traded company, so you can go ahead and check if you are interested in the Wayfair stock or any financials that are publicly available.
Okay, cool. And obviously why we brought Lily and AndMakers on here is because you guys work with Wayfair and seller. But Lily, can you please introduce yourself and AndMakers?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder as well as the Chief Biz Development Officer at AndMakers, and we connect makers with sellers. And we started in 2017, and we noticed that a lot of the makers of the world were having a little bit of trouble in connecting with different retailers like Wayfair. So me and my partners decided to figure out how we can offer this solution to help make it easier. And so we have 3 core services. One is that we created our proprietary ERP software, the dashboard, to help you manage all your orders and customer service and shipments and all that good stuff. And then we also have a fulfillment and warehouse center in Northern California, where we can ship directly to the dropship retailers. And then we also make sales connections to different retailers like Wayfair. And we also have other services like branding and marketing and all that good stuff to basically help you manage end-to-end how you might be able to enter the US market. So I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having us. And just recently, besides helping these makers, we've also entered to new countries like China, Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Europe, Korea. And so we're happy to be here. So thank you again for hosting us.
Of course. And one of the big goals of Payoneer is to enable sellers to sell around the world. So whether we have sellers here in the US looking to expand to another domestic marketplace, or those in India or Bangalore or Bhutan like we've seen, or from China like looking to expand into the US, AndMakers is here to help, specifically with Wayfair. So I think what's important is to jump in a little bit and just dive in to talk a little bit about Wayfair. So we're talking about how Wayfair sits in the home goods categories. So Michael, are there any specific categories within that that you or Wayfair are looking for right now?
So what Wayfair has historically been very strong at is furniture-related categories. So in furniture, that's the largest amount of business volume that we're doing today. Specifically with COVID-19, we've seen a huge spike in demand across the board as more people in the US and other parts of the world are working from home. And so our home office categories have been uh, growing like crazy, specifically like things like desks and chairs and categories like that. We continue to foresee that with COVID-19 that the online portion of home goods sales will continue to grow, and it probably because of this pandemic has grown a lot more quickly than it would have otherwise. So there's a lot of opportunities in furniture just capturing the sales of demand that was traditionally to brick and mortar stores in the US and is now shifting more online. Outside furniture categories, I'd say there are a lot of what we at Wayfair call emerging categories, which are categories that we've historically not been very large in and we don't think are very well penetrated online. So things like large appliances, so think washing machines, dryers, things like that. Other things might be pets and things sort of like chicken coops and like those kinds of maybe outdoor or larger animal types of products. So there's a lot of those products that we call emerging because they're higher growth and much smaller on Wayfair. And then there's our primary bread and butter, which is the furniture related categories.
So Wayfair is expanding outside of, what was traditionally just furniture.
Yeah, Wayfair in its history probably initially expanded really quickly into other categories and has since pulled back. So, for example, we used to sell, I think, a lot of like pet. There are some weird pet categories or exercise equipment. Like Wayfair was dipping its toes into like treadmills and other exercise equipment, has since pulled back. So over the years, Wayfair found that expanded two main categories. It had an impact on sort of our branding and awareness. So we've now shrunk back down. Right now, everything that you see on the website, our categories Wayfair is currently in, and we don't plan on changing that in the near term. We just plan on expanding our footprint within those categories. So a lot of the ones I mentioned, like large appliances or pets, they've been on our site for the last few years, but they're just small and are looking to grow really quickly.
So you talked a little bit about COVID-19 and how it's affected online businesses. I think I saw that over the last couple of months, the e-commerce world in general is growing at about 44%. So, everyone has had to turn to buying online, especially, that home office category. And I'm sure that's a pretty big one now for Wayfair. So how do you think that's also affected Wayfair's business? Lesser on the seller side, because obviously sellers can sell those products, but how do you think that affected Wayfair's view in terms of the opportunity as well?
I think a lot of people expect that where online has always been a place where people expected more share of wallet to increase over the years. We think COVID-19 may have jumped that maybe 5 years or 10 years and accelerated that process. So we do expect that there a lot of the customers that were forced to try online services like Wayfair for the first time are going to stay. So we do expect a lot of the new customers that have been our first time buyers, we're seeing the same amounts of retention from them as our normal new customers. So we do think that it's a permanent change and not a temporary change. In terms of how it's affected Wayfair, like you can probably see the stock prices have been going crazy for Wayfair this past year. We've had a first profitable quarter earlier this year in Q2 and expect that trend to continue. And revenue during COVID-19 has been at a pace of over 80% year over year for Wayfair. And although we don't expect that to be permanent, we expect growth to slow down a little. We do expect that, in general, growth will still be pretty strong for Wayfair going forward.
Okay, cool. Not sure if anyone else had a technical glitch there, but my thing just shut down for a second. So maybe it's just me. But Lily, I think it's important to also talk about how COVID-19 has affected the businesses that you work with, the vendors from overseas, and what does that look like from the end makers perspective, and how have you guys helped sellers overcome these challenges in the last couple of months?
Yeah. So the number one advice that I've given to our sellers is take the challenges as opportunities and pivot slightly. So let's say you're a commercial office chair vendor, right? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, offices are closed right now in the US, and you can't work from there, and that's your main sales demographic. So figure out, if you have this product, how can you pivot slightly so that you can help that opportunity to sell to a new group. So as Michael just mentioned, the home office category grew. So if you have a commercial style product where maybe that type of demographic has closed off, then how do you pivot so that you can maybe even just change your marketing slightly, where your tagline changes, where maybe the offering also is a little bit different, so that then you can have the connections directly with Wayfair. Another thing too is just figuring out what is the right connections for your products. So some of our clients, like Michael mentioned too, they had their purchase orders canceled because the brick and mortar retailers were closed. So then having to move slightly and figure out what are some of the e-commerce areas or retailers that are open so that we can get their products up quickly. And then another thing I would say is really focusing on having a good, reliable warehouse partner who is going to be transparent and have the technology to help share the inventory, like the counts, directly with the retailers. So yeah, I would say those are the main things I would share and how we've helped our makers.
So one of the things that I think has come up, and basically why AndMakers is involved, is around fulfillment time. So Michael, what would you tell suppliers or sellers from around the world about the importance of the fulfillment time for Wayfair?
So I would say this was probably a trend that Amazon started, but customers are getting more and more used to getting things quickly when they shop online. So on Amazon, you can get products same day in many places, and at the slowest maybe 2 or 3. It has continued in terms of that higher level of expectation all the way through large furniture products. So Wayfair has what's called speed badging on our site, where we let customers know when they can receive products within 3 days of ordering. And that leads to higher conversion and better sales for those products. So that is something that's extremely important online in general. I would say in the future, we expect that time to even shrink further. So on the Wayfair side, we're investing on infrastructure to get products to customers faster. We have more partners like AndMakers that are also working to ship things out more quickly. So it'll become more and more important. I would say in the past year, because of COVID-19, it's been less important than typical, just because the biggest question is, availability on product and whether you can even buy things. But assuming next year things return to more normal, fulfillment time is going to be really important. And what we need on Wayfair side is to have a clear understanding of how long it takes for you to ship products out from your warehouse, if there are, or from a third-party warehouse, if there are orders.
So talking about the role of a third-party logistics company and a partner in that sense in the U.S., what does that look like, Lily? What does that look like from the AndMaker side? How important it is to find the right partner, especially if you are an international business, entering a new market?
Yeah. So what does that look like? So essentially, you have some goods, whether it be, furniture or, ornaments, especially with Christmas coming up. You want to find a reliable partner who can not only fulfill the products on time and make sure that they can get you that information, whether it be like tracking information, like shipment, because when you're working with Wayfair, they're going to need that info so that they can share that with their clients, right? And then from there, you want to work with a partner who can really work with you, because this might be brand new to some of the suppliers, right? And you want someone that can build a strong foundation with you. And one of the ways that I really believe in, doing this is communication. With the thank God for technology, we now have WeChat, Skype, WhatsApp, Slack, Zoom, all of these different technical platforms to communicate. And we're actually doing that with our clients. We have, people in Asia, China specifically, and then Korea and in India that can actually communicate directly with our suppliers. And sometimes we get in the middle of the night text messages as well, but we're here for you guys. So I would say, communication is really key in finding a 3PL partner.
And, entering a new market in terms of, an Indian seller in this case, because I know we have a number here, selling into the US in regards to, I guess in this case, Americanizing your product, right? So making sure that your product is good to sell on the shelves in the US. How does that look, or how does that differ? How does AndMakers help with that?
Yeah, so when branding in the US, you need to make sure that your mission is super clear. Like, what is it that you're selling? And you want to make sure that you articulate that in a way that the everyday person that's going online can really understand that. And by doing that, it helps build the longevity, right? And then when you have clarity and then a good mission, it really enables you to find the right partners like Michael and his team, so that they can then take all of that information and easily sell your products on their platform. So, like, let me give you an example. We had a client, Diver, and they sell barbecue grills and pizza ovens. And in the last 6 months, they've been able to grow 950%. And why is that? So we help them really focus on crystallizing their message. Like, yes, they're amazing in building this product and manufacturing this item. So how do we get the right merchandising, for example, like the copy, the imagery, the videos? Then we built a website for them to show this off, and then we got them into different channels like Wayfair. And now I just found out that their products are being showcased on New York Post, and Kelly Clarkson might pick it up as well. So yeah, like barbecue grills and pizza oven and Kelly Clarkson. So I would say, again, just really focusing on crystallizing your message and what is it that you're trying to sell, and then how do we get you to the right partners.
So I just wanted to address, I know there's quite a few questions coming in the chat. I'm going to save most of them for the end. A lot of them are kind of specifics about categories and selling on Wayfair. So let's just carry on, and then we'll get to the end at the end, I promise. So Michael, Lily brought up the question about finding those suppliers, and from a Wayfair perspective, right now you mentioned that you're responsible for finding suppliers in Asia. And how do you do that now? Like, what are you specifically looking for in a brand to bring them onto Wayfair?
So right now we're not looking for necessarily like specific brands or specific products. The way we are targeting is one, any supplier that's interested in onboarding on Wayfair, let's figure out a way to get them on Wayfair. So for example, if you have no e-commerce experience and don't know where to start, like Lily and AndMakers is a great place to sort of start to figure that out. If you're an experienced seller that has been selling on Amazon for a decade, then we just want to make it easy for you to just onboard onto Wayfair very quickly. So right now, today, for international suppliers, we get most of our leads from two channels. So one is either inbound, where the supplier has said they're interested in joining Wayfair, and the second is from our partners. So we actually work closely with people like AndMakers or Payoneer, and basically their customer bases that are interested in selling on Wayfair, we get connected by folks like Lily or Green Channel teams at Payoneer, and then start the onboarding process from there. So really, those are the two main ways. We're not looking for anyone specific. If you're interested, we'll find a way to try to accommodate you.
Right, and obviously you have to be selling somewhat within the categories and the products that Wayfair is offering. You're not going to create a new channel just for this seller, but we've had some questions about different products and items in jewelry or in home decor and sporting goods, and we'll get to them at the end. And right now it seems like Wayfair is looking to expand the core categories that are on the site now. So if you are watching this or listening to this and you don't see the category that you sell on the Wayfair site currently, I'm sure you can reach out to Michael and his team, but odds are if you're selling electronics, it's not going to be the right fit for you right now. Is that right to say, or fair to say?
Yeah, that's a great call. I sometimes take it for granted that we sell only home goods, but yeah, unfortunately, if you sell non-home goods, then there's nothing you can really do on Wayfair. Like, for example, we're not going to sell laptops or headphones,
Right.
but if you do have home goods or the ability to source and sell those goods, then we're more than happy to put them on our website.
And Michael, you talked a little bit about the importance of having, a partner in this process. So, I'm going to flip this over to Lily and the AndMakers team. And, if you are a brand, based in Asia or based anywhere in the world that has, never really gotten into the e-commerce world yet, no time like the present, especially given this little bit of a global pandemic we're still in the midst of. So, Lily, do you want to just dive in a little bit deeper about the core services that you think are top of the line, most relevant for helping those sellers enter either the US or the e-commerce world?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think the main thing is to do your market research on understanding if there's a product demand in the US. That's number one. And then if there is, I would then look at pricing, right? Because right now, especially if selling online, there's so many different access points. So you want to make sure that if you're going to launch, that you're going to be competitive in the marketplace. And then the other thing is from there, we would help analyze like all the different features of your product. And then from there, we would also then figure out what is your sales strategy based on those that category that you might have. So obviously, if you're in the home goods sector, we're going to connect you with Wayfair and see if that's a way that we can, build the sales there. Besides that, we also offer other services like, for example, the other day I've been asked, how do I set up a US bank account? Right. So, we try our best to stay on top of all the different things that our clients might need. And then we'll partner up with Payoneer so that we can then say, hey, check this resource out and see if this would be a good fit for your company. And then other times we also have other inquiries like, how do I set up the logo on the box itself? Do I need to be Prop 65 compliant? And how do I create a pro forma invoice? All these different questions. So me and my team will help answer those questions.
So Lily, that actually touches on two of the points in the Q&A. So I think let's just touch on them while we're here. So looks like there was a question of how can we connect Payoneer to sell on Wayfair? And the really great part is if you are based internationally, Payoneer provides you with a US dollar receiving account because your sales on Wayfair are going to be made in US dollars if we're talking about this platform specifically, and they're going to pay out in dollars. So you can connect your Payoneer US account to that and receive your payout into Payoneer. There was another question saying, if I'm a brand, can I still put the logo on my products to sell on Wayfair, or does it have to include the Wayfair logo? So I'm not sure if this is something, Michael, you want to take?
Yeah, so you do not need to adjust packaging for Wayfair. So Wayfair does white label on site most of our products. So we will put the products you put on our site, the vast majority of them will go into a specific Wayfair brand. However, we don't have any requirements around packaging. And in certain cases where you may have a real brand name or something like that, we also do have the option to not put them in a Wayfair brand and for you to sell under your own brand. But today you're free to package however you want. Just on site, it's very likely that Wayfair will be putting it in a Wayfair brand.
Okay. So if you are already an established third-party seller, you're familiar with the selling on Amazon and Walmart, you can take those same products, that same package, that same order that you placed, and have those products be fulfilled on Wayfair or sold on Wayfair and then fulfilled. There was another question around that, which I thought was interesting, and I don't know the answer to. So, Michael, do you have any insight into the return rate, or how what that looks like? And Lily and AndMakers, you guys touch on the fulfillment side of things. Do you also help with returns? Like, what's the best practice for that, especially if you are an overseas company? Having individual parcels or whatever it looks like shipped back to India is not going to be cost effective for you.
So I'll answer first and then Lily can jump in. But for returns high level, in terms of return rate, it depends on the product category and the product itself. So there's always going to be a percentage of customers that return a product because they changed their mind. But there are ways to also decrease return rate by making sure that the products that you list on the website are accurate. So is the imagery that you've put for the product representative of the actual product? Are the product details, if you say it's black, is it actually black? Like, those all reduce the return rate. But in general, I'll say return rates tend to vary from 1 to 6%. Typically, I think it's on average much closer to 2 or 3, or sometimes 4. It's very rarely above that. But usually it has to do with, if the products are merchandised well on site and arriving undamaged, that return rate tends to be very low. And then in terms of returns, if you're an international supplier, there are a few ways you can do it. So today, if you are able to process returns through a third-party logistics partner or your own warehouse, that's obviously good for you guys. So you can collect the product back, potentially repackage and sell it, do what you want with it. Wayfair this next year will also be releasing a new policy where, for suppliers that don't want to handle returns at all, Wayfair will take advantage of doing it for them. That is currently not offered today, but is going to be released next year. It'll involve a slightly increased damage allowance agreement for Wayfair to handle the cost of processing all of these returns, but that will be a new option for suppliers in 2021.
Hey, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm so bad with the mute. I'm muting it just in case there's any background noise or anything. But so how does AndMakers help, or do they help with returns, or we talked about the fulfillment, but the returns, and then what can the sellers do once AndMakers handles the returns, if so?
Yep. Yeah, that's exciting, by the way, Michael. I think that would be great for the suppliers once Wayfair launches that. And so how we handle returns is, if the policy allows that there is returns, we would then ship the product directly back to our warehouse. And sometimes, if this is required by the supplier, we'll also take photos and then repack as needed. And sometimes I suggest to suppliers when you're going to ship a container of your product, put some extra boxes in the container so that if we do the rebox, then we're not we can stay on brand, and we can also make sure that the SKU number or whatnot is married to that. And then talking about photos, right? So because we want to empower our makers, we will take photos so that you can, if there was any weird issues with the packaging, it kept on kind of getting damage on a certain corner or whatnot. We take these photos so that you guys take it back to your PD team. So then that way you guys can, use that information for the future products, so that maybe it's extra packaging or a certain foam needs to be put in a certain area, et cetera. So that's how we help.
Awesome. And I think, a couple other questions about, what does it look like to actually sell on Wayfair? And Michael, I think it's a little bit more regarding the requirements, which you did address in terms of, having insurance. Can you go a little bit deeper into that? Because I think maybe if sellers might not be fully, or suppliers or brands might not be fully know what that looks like for you.
Yeah. So first, if you are interested in selling on Wayfair, there are a few different ways to do it. The first is to reach out to a partner like Payoneer if you're already a customer. Another way is to go directly to our website and apply. And then there are some requirements. So once you are starting to onboard, you the few requirements are, one, you're obviously going to have to sign some agreements with Wayfair in terms of being a seller, different allowances, payment terms, etc. You will have to have what's called general liability insurance. This is meant to cover if something goes wrong. So let's say you sell a product, because we're selling products that we don't necessarily know compliance information for, since they're sold by you, and we don't have good visibility into that. We require insurance just to make sure, if in the event something does go wrong and a customer has an issue, that you are covered and able to handle that, and that Wayfair is also covered from a legal liability perspective. Besides insurance, the only other thing you need to do is be okay with the Wayfair business model, which basically means you are selling products from a U.S. warehouse and sending them directly to customers. And in terms of when Wayfair pays you, it'll be after the customer sells it. So Wayfair is not purchasing POs up front. We're not telling you how many we are going to get. It's just you selling on the website like a marketplace. So imagine eBay, Amazon Marketplace, those kinds of things.
So there are a couple of questions regarding that, and what does the commission look like from Wayfair? Does it change per category? Is it flat across the board? And any insight into what it is, or is it too complicated to go into?
So it is complicated. So it's not a commission per se. So the way we handle it is through what's called a wholesale cost. So for those of you who are familiar with traditional retail, where a retailer will order 1,000 units of a product at a specific wholesale cost. They'll buy it, you'll send it to them. That's the cost model that Wayfair uses. So you'll provide a wholesale cost to Wayfair, and then Wayfair will take that wholesale cost, layer in other costs that we have, so things like shipping, customer service, etc., and then come up and then add a Wayfair margin to that product. So our margin for us to price, and then set a final price for the customer. The margin that Wayfair takes varies by product category. It also has a lot of other variables that are taken into account, like other website pricing, like Amazon, where they price that, time of year for seasonal products, things like if the margin is higher or lower, how much they'll sell, so demand elasticity. So it's quite a complicated thing. It's completely driven by computer algorithm, but suffice to say, for you, the supplier, if your wholesale cost is cheap or lower than other products, then the price will be cheaper or lower than other similar products. So I can't, unfortunately, just give you a simple, here's the commission, and that's what it is. But I can say that we are, as far as it pertains to your competitiveness with other suppliers or items on our website, if they are similar products, we take a similar margin structure. So any differences in price tend to be wholesale cost driven.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting and advantageous for the suppliers compared to some of the other marketplaces. And it seems like it's quite dynamic, and you're going to basically pay for the demand and pay for the seasonality, rather than just flat across the board, when it may not be right for your item. I think there's a question here, as if Wayfair does something like FBA, and I'll let you address that, but I think I can also let Lily address that and what they do. And FBA, for people that don't know, if you're familiar with selling on Amazon, it's their fulfillment solution that's built into their platform. Sellers or suppliers are familiar with that, but there's absolutely alternatives to that can help you, whether you're selling on Wayfair or Amazon or Walmart. So, Michael, is there something like an FBA?
Yeah, so it's not exactly the same. We have our own warehouse logistics network called Castlegate. So these are Wayfair owned and operated warehouses in the US. We also have an international supply chain team that handles ocean freight and other things for products coming from Asia, for example. It's not the exact same as FBA, because FBA is specialized in smaller products. Amazon obviously has a much larger warehouse network. FBA also has a lot more of a presence internationally in Asia in terms of handling those containers and products leaving the docks in Asia. Our network for Wayfair is focused on obviously products that Wayfair sells a lot more of. So we're a lot more specialized in what I'll call medium size or larger products. We're also not to the same level of scale as Amazon FBA. So we don't actually accept all suppliers into Castlegate. So on Amazon FBA, if you're interested, you can usually find a way to sell your products and put them in Amazon FBA. On Wayfair today, it is mostly invite only into our Castlegate network. We're looking for only products that are higher volume and pretty safely will sell. So it's more invite only, so it's harder to get into. But luckily, there are partners like Lily AndMakers who will do that service in terms of handling your logistics and domestic warehousing when Wayfair won't. And long term, I also don't think it'll change. I don't think we're going to ever have the same level of penetration as FBA per se, but today, definitely your best option as you're starting out is partnering with a partner like AndMakers or another third party.
Right, and I think, why that's important is for a lot of these brands or suppliers that may be entering the market for the first time and not necessarily know what you do, that's where the real value of an AndMakers comes in. Kind of lets you test the market through a partner like AndMakers. So, Lily, what makes a good retail or supplier partner in your eyes or in AndMakers' eyes?
Yeah, so I would say strong communications, shared values, and obviously helping to figure out how to have that good reputation. So for the last 15 years, I've looked with Wayfair with admiration and psyched to see the growth, Michael, by the way, and how they've been able to, really maintain the personality and the values to support vendors, especially with the growth. So I would say when looking for, a good retail supplier partnership, just really communication again, and just figuring out how to align those values.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, marketplaces set the terms and set the rules of how they want to operate. And I think Wayfair is very supplier and brand focused. And, I think whether you guys are just getting started or a really experienced entrepreneur, there's two real routes for you to go here. It's directly with Wayfair or work with AndMakers. But, they want you as part of the network because they're looking to grow. And, this is something very much that, we see with other marketplaces, 5-10 years before they get to where they are now. And I think we know who we're talking about. They're, absolutely a global brand. And, it's very hard to enter Amazon now and be competitive or be successful because it is so competitive. Where I think given if you have the right product and the right partners along the way, Wayfair can be successful for you now into 2021 and the next couple of years. So there's a couple of questions, Michael or Lily, maybe regarding the insurance side of things. I know we said it's just general liability insurance, but do we want to cover that again? Because it says, how would an Indian-based seller get insurance in the U.S. if they don't have a U.S. entity? I think that's going to be one of the main questions. Lily,
so
Michael?
I'll start, and then Lily might have some stuff to add. So even if you don't have the entity, there are still insurance companies, like let's say in India, there are insurance companies in India that will provide insurance for the US. So you would just have to, during onboarding, Wayfair provides the exact requirements and even an example document of what that looks like. And you would just need to go to an Indian insurance provider and see if they can meet those requirements and if they'd be willing to, and they'll give you a price for that insurance. Now, if you don't have a U.S. entity, that price would probably be different than if you do have a U.S. entity. But in terms of access and ability to get that insurance, companies around the world do it. And from our side on Wayfair, we are building out our own network of insurance providers to be able to recommend. So if you are truly lost, we will have some recommendations, and I'm sure Lily does as well, countries of the world.
Yep. Yeah, so we work with insurance brokers to help find the best pricing and the needs that we need, right, for different ones, like the requirements that Wayfair has. And then also, if you want to have a fast track to get your products up, we have an account called AndMakers where we can also feature your products underneath that. And then that is the insurance through our own account.
So how it works is you need insurance as a seller rather than as a brand.
Correct. Every supplier account on our site
Supplier, sorry,
needs,
supplier.
every supplier needs to have insurance. Now, if you want to have a side deal with Lily and AndMakers where they list your product for you, then yes, then in that case, like Lily said, they would use their own insurance, their own account. And from Wayfair's perspective, that is, we would just be selling AndMakers product per se.
Cool. So there's a couple of I guess more product specific questions, and I think Michael, if you don't mind, we might just go through a couple of them to make sure we address people's questions. So someone was asking, are you able to sell bamboo planters on Wayfair?
So
They
I
fall under
believe
home
so.
decor, they
Yeah,
say.
if it's under home decor, we sell it. For bamboo
Okay.
planters specifically, I'm not as familiar with every product in every product category, but I'm sure we do sell a few, and we do sell home decor.
Cool. And I think you addressed this, but sports decor might not be as
Sports products,
applicable.
we don't really sell sports products. That's more of, and same with toys and games, which
Toys
was
and
just
games.
in chat. We don't sell those kinds of things. So
Right. So anything in the home goods, things you'd buy to furnish your home, to whether it's ranging from furniture to table items and stuff like that, seems more on the Wayfair kind of spectrum. But
and I would just add, sorry to interrupt, TJ. If you're ever unsure, go to wayfair.com and literally look at the different categories. That's what
I was gonna say. Yeah, I was gonna say that's the best place to start. If you go there and you see something similar to yours, then reach out to Michael and his team, or Lily and her team, and they'll be able to give you a more concrete answer. But if you start selling something and it's not up there, it's way away from that, you might want to reconsider reaching out to Wayfair. So I think what we'll do right now is put up our contact details just so people can see that for the last couple of minutes. I think we are close to done. But so I'm just going to leave it open for the Q&A. There's a couple more in here, which I'll just address. So the first one is that we are recording this webinar, so that if you have any other questions and you want to follow up with this in a couple theys, you'll have that recording. You can watch it back. You can also access all of our contact details, and that'll be sent out in the next day or two. There's a comment here, comment in the question and answer, not necessarily a question, but saying that it seems like it's a bit complicated for Indian sellers to sell on Wayfair. And I think it's important to address that, because to me, it's not like, I think that there's plenty of partners along the way that can actually help with this process for suppliers, whether you're in India or in Vietnam or in China or in the US even. Like, this should not be something that you just do on your own. And I think that's one of the really important reasons why we wanted to bring AndMakers on here and show that there are partners like them that can help with everything, or they can help with parts of it. And I just want to be sure to address that as well.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that there are a lot of partners for each piece. I saw a comment in chat or a question like, what's Payoneer's role? Like, if for banking, for example, Wayfair pays in USD to a US local bank. So in order to operate there, you obviously, if you're in India, for example, want to access your money in India, well, that's where Payoneer would come in, provide you that US account. We're paying that US account, but Payoneer is making it available for you to withdraw in India very easily. So each step of the way, if you do it yourself, yeah, it's probably complicated. But there are a lot of people and companies that are there to help. And so if you are truly interested, and you want to know who to reach out to, like TJ said, there are a lot of people, and like Lily from AndMakers, if you've got no idea where to start, they can be a good starting point.
Right.
Yeah.
And I encourage, go ahead, Lily.
Yeah, and we recently brought on a client in India that sells like recliners, and it did feel in the beginning like a long process, but we have a set of questions, and we help basically break down each of the things, from pricing to merchandising to shipments to all of that. And we got it through, and they should be shipping in a couple of months or so. So I know it sounds like there's a lot, but that we're here to make it easier. And I think the main thing too is just like that's why communication is so important here. And our team will like basically help via what's all the different channels that we have. And if you think it's a stupid question, just ask it. We can then figure out together how to help with that, getting the answer. And if we don't know, like for example, maybe it is that there's some specific rules in India that we might not know right now. We'll go find the right experts, and we'll do this together.
Yeah, 100%. So that's about the end of this. So on the screen here, you should see Michael, Lily, and my email, as well as some landing pages that can lead you to either a questionnaire or a little bit more details about AndMakers and what they do. But as we've mentioned, if you have any questions, if you are still unsure, like Lily said, ask the questions, see if it's right, work with whomever you need to make it across the line. Being still, a really good time to start selling online, whether you're just a traditional supplier and you want to get into the e-commerce world, whether you've been selling on Amazon and Walmart or whomever around the world and you want to expand to a new marketplace, it's not going to hurt your business. I almost promise it, but I'm not going to promise it. All right, cool. Thank you so much, guys. I think that's it. And if you need anything else, like I said, feel free to reach out. Michael, Lily, really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you as well for hosting, TJ and Payoneer, and thanks everyone for coming.
Of course.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye, guys.